oh man, some of the moral judgment I've seen has been like really strange. I really don't like this guy. I think he's a complete grifter. He's kind of like a tabloid newspaper. Like in the same way that you can't teach a cockroach to speak English, I don't think humans are capable of infinite knowledge. What it is, what it do. It's your boy back again with another Idubbbz review. Alright, so we all know what a simp is, right? Well, if you don't, this is what it is.
Suckers idolizing mediocre pussy, some male who will do anything for a little bit of play from a female.
And lately, accusations of people being a simp have been thrown around a lot. PewDiePie made a video about it, Paul Joseph Watson made a video about it, and now the accusation has gone Idubbbz's way. Alright, so basically, Idubbbz's girlfriend, who's like a streamer or something, opened an OnlyFans account where she sells like lewd pictures or whatever. And she also got like a boob job. Now this attracted a lot of attention and a lot of backlash. Not just towards her, because apparently she said some hypocritical stuff about doing this sort of thing. Like she made fun of e-girls and booby girls or whatever in the past. But I don't really care about that aspect. I don't care about her. I want to focus on the backlash Idubbbz got. Even a very good chunk of his subreddit seemed to like turn on him. Started calling him a cuck and a simp and like, how could you do this to us? And this really confuses me for a couple of reasons. One, people seem to have this weird idea that Idubbbz is somehow against like e-girls or whatever, or people that do like sexualized content online, even though I don't think he's ever explicitly said anything against them. I guess it's just the kind of attitude and the demeanor he puts across seems to lend itself to people thinking that he would be one of those types of guys. It's another example how even if you don't explicitly say something, your audience might get a certain impression of you that doesn't quite fit reality. And another reason this confuses me is why people even care. And I don't mean in the sense that, oh, this is interesting news, so that's why I care. No, I mean, I'm talking more about the negative reaction to all this, like the moral judgment and how he has apparently gone down in people's estimations. It should be something that's just like interesting news that's neutral. It shouldn't really change how you think about the guy one way or another. And if it does, maybe you ought to look at yourself. Like, oh man, some of the moral judgment I've seen has been like really strange. It's not like he's made his private life like a big part of his videos or anything. Like, I love drama shit, but I try not to get super invested in aspects of people's personal lives, especially if it's not something that's a part of their brand or regular content. And even more so if there isn't really any harm being done. And I find it really weird when others get invested in this sort of thing. I don't know, seeing people like speculate on the nature of their relationship and stuff like that is so strange to me. Maybe he's just okay with it, or maybe he's not, I don't know. Maybe he's secretly seething inside. But I really don't get why people care either way. I saw comments like, well, how does he feel knowing that other dudes are jacking off to his girl? Or stuff like that. It's like, how many steps removed do you gotta be until that sort of thing is acceptable to you? So if like a supermodel who has done like sort of lewdish photo shoots or whatever is your girlfriend, then are you a simp as well? I guess Cristiano Ronaldo's a simp now. Because you know millions of guys are fap to that, right? And I don't know, like sexual puritans confuse the shit out of me. Like you don't have to apply your relationship standards or what you'd look for in a relationship to everyone else, right? Like it's not causing any harm, let them live their lives. Like I personally don't like tattoos. I will never ever get one. But I'm not gonna look down on everyone that does. Like you can save yourself for Jesus and only do it missionary if you want. But I don't know, don't set those standards and feel the need to pressure everyone else to live their lives the same way you do. Like a lot of this simp shit, on the one hand, I think it calls out a lot of these sort of cringy nice guys who like try to go above and beyond, doing like favors or whatever, because they think that they'll get something in return sexually. On the other hand, I feel like it's starting to be used unnecessarily or unfairly at times, just to bring someone down and make yourself feel better, or to just not engage with something that makes you uncomfortable. Like anytime a guy does something that might remotely be interpreted as, you know, doing something nice or defending someone who happens to be a girl, whether or not you're actually right doesn't matter. You're a simp. It's so cringe, dude. Alright, let's move on to someone who I actually quite dislike, and I'm sure I'll be called a simp because I'm attacking him here. And that's TheQuartering's. I really don't like this guy. I think he is a complete grifter. Okay, so TheQuartering's is a big YouTuber, especially in the gaming sphere. He does a lot of gaming news and stuff, but he also makes other types of videos like about movies and TV shows, and about YouTube and social issues. And I gotta say, I almost respect him. How he is able to consistently read obscure articles and stretch non-issues into 10-minute plus outrage clickbait is unbelievable to me. Like, I had previously seen his stuff, but I didn't realize to what extent he grifts. Like, I wish I was able to put out this sort of trash, you know, put aside any sort of moral backbone or personal convictions and pander to a baying crowd of sheep. I mean, kudos to him. He's on the hustle, bruh. You know what? He kind of reminds me of Leafy. Leafy is here. Remember that guy? Leafy used to do this thing where he'd pick on cringy kids a little too often. Like, it started to get a bit weird. Like, he was spamming that shit. And the Quartering does the same thing, except instead of cringy kids, he's looking at female leads in movies and TV shows. I don't know, maybe he wasn't breastfed as a kid, but man, does he try to milk these videos. You know, some of these shows like Batwoman or whatever seem kind of cringe, I get that. But holy shit, to be so viscerally enthusiastic about how every single one of these shows do poorly, and you basically make the same video like 10 times in the span of like a month. I don't know, I start to question what you're really trying to do here. Alright, anyway, so there is a person I've seen him consistently go after recently who isn't a female lead of a TV show, and that's Carlos Maza. Some dude from Vox, or I think he used to work for Vox and he doesn't anymore. He became recently famous because he had like this drama thing with Steven Crowder. Anyway, so the Quartering made a couple of videos on him where he said some really dumb stuff. It was super cringe. Alright, so in his most recent video about Maza, he reads some articles from not very reputable sources to be fair, but I'll still take it on face value that they're true. That allege that Maza's family are really, really rich and they own expensive property and stuff. Now, given the fact that Carlos has tweeted stuff like this, which is a very stupid statement in my opinion, even more so if you yourself are wealthy, then I understand pointing it out. He's being a hypocritical dumbass. Like, I think throwing someone's wealth back in their face is like a really stupid thing to do. As if that inherently makes their opinion worth less somehow. Like, if their opinions are excessively serving their wealthy self-interests, like if they say, oh, we need to cut social services in order to give tax breaks to wealthy people, then attack that, but don't attack the fact that they're wealthy at all, right? So I'll concede that. Carlos made a really stupid tweet. And maybe he's an idiot overall, I don't really know his content too well. But anyway, let's just get to the videos.
Hi, I'm Carlos. I've loved working at Vox the past few years. I'm making this video because it's time for me to
Jesus,
do my own.
way to
So I'm
give me a
on my channel,
seizure
go
here,
fully
Quartering.
yeah, baby, going in.
This is all just an intro, by the way, that doesn't actually make any point.
They're here.
Jeez, 1.5 minutes. This is how he stretches his watch time.
Carlos Maza is
Get your shit together, mate.
back! After failing to strike it out on his own in any other media outlet, after being what can only be described, in my opinion, as being fired from Vox, he has now come crawling back to the content community and that of YouTube and hopes to pay whatever bills apparently he needs to be paid.
Okay, let me just say this whole YouTube community thing, there's no community on YouTube, alright? YouTube as a whole is huge, full of all kinds of people. You know, most of those people that like dislike the YouTube Rewind or whatever, that's like a tiny percentage of overall YouTube viewer base. Like, no one actually gives a shit about them or their opinions. Boomers use YouTube now too. Alright, there is no real YouTube community. Like, that's a completely nebulous nonsense idea that doesn't mean anything. But anyway.
Paid. And it's all too deliciously ironic to see Carlos Maza come back to try and be supported by the very community in which he spent months vilifying. A community of creators left, right, center, or wherever on the political spectrum that was negatively affected by his me witch hunt.
Okay, a couple of things here. Again, you can criticize the platform you're on while still wanting to benefit off of it or profit off of it. Right? There's nothing wrong with those things. I'm pretty sure the Quartering himself has criticized a lot of aspects of YouTube throughout his dumb channel's history. And two, if you're going to bring up like the fact that his actions led to more stringent rules or whatever on YouTube as something negative towards him, then are you going to criticize PewDiePie for doing the same thing? Wasn't he like the catalyst for the biggest adpocalypse, possibly 2 of them? But no, he wouldn't criticize that, of course.
Yeah, Steven Crowder said a mean word about me. Everyone on the platform should suffer.
Okay, I really don't like how he's framing the situation. He's being really disingenuous and he knows it. Alright, so for anyone who doesn't know what happened with the Crowder-Maza situation, it wasn't a case of Maza trying to get everyone in YouTube to suffer because Crowder said some mean words. What happened was, Crowder very clearly breached YouTube's content policy and repeatedly targeted Maza based on his protected class status. In this case, his sexuality.
Center line on his little queer graph there. What is
Well,
that
now
line?
the graph is queer?
Violence, filth.
Okay, so the little queer could eat his chips all nonchalantly. It's code for rape, Mr. Queer eating chips on the Vox channel. Chip, 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 but you can eat just one. Like dicks. With our favorite lispy sprite from Vox.
And this happened like multiple times. I only showed a couple of examples, right? That if you're going to do pieces criticizing someone's political content, which is fine, but then while you're doing that, you intersperse it with these little jabs, poking fun at their race and sexual orientation, right? It's not like he's talking about this in a matter-of-fact context where he's describing the person in a relevant scenario. No, he's just being like, ha, he's gay. Look at him. He's a gay person. And you add to the fact that Crowder did this several times, and you add on his broader body of work, wherein he has entertained the idea that gayness is a sin, and has sold t-shirts that say socialism is for F-words. Yeah, I mean, I think there's pretty clearly some homophobic undertones here. Actually, I shouldn't even say undertones, that's being way too charitable. He's clearly targeting the fact that the guy is gay. repeatedly. Like imagine if he repeatedly called a black dude that he disagrees with a stupid black man or a thuggish darky while doing an over-the-top African American accent and wearing a socialism is for N-words t-shirt. You know, it's completely analogous to what he actually did. And you do all that to an audience of conservatives without any hint of irony. These aren't jokes, these are juvenile insults. And beyond the fact that that's an incredibly juvenile and morally abhorrent thing to do, it's also against YouTube's policy. It's really weird that people like TheQuartering and his fan base, who cry about how white men are being attacked in the media or whatever, through like some subverted agendas. But if you have an issue with that, then there's no way you should be okay with what Crowder did. And yet somehow they were. Yeah, it's almost like they hold no actual principles, and they want to feel victimized for themselves while encouraging or excusing bigotry towards others. I think TheQuartering is aware of what he's doing. I think he knows this. I'm sure he's familiar with YouTube's terms of service, and he knows that Crowder violated them. But he doesn't care, because the facts actually don't matter to him. He's a grifter.
Now, I would have expected significantly, I saw this video, 60,000 views. But it only netted him 12,000 subscribers. That's pretty sad. But for 60,000 views, to only amass 12,000 subscribers, it seems pretty sad. It seems like nobody really likes Carlos Maza.
What? What are these attacks? Your viewer to subscriber retention numbers aren't good enough. Also, I think those are pretty good numbers. If you know 1 in 5 people who watched that video subscribed, that's really good. I had 12,000 views on my Trainwrecks video, and I gained like less than 200 subs off of it, I think. People just don't subscribe on YouTube as much as they used to like 5 or 10 years ago. And also, TheQuartering's most popular video has over 4 million views and was made in April 2019. And yet he only has 675,000 subscribers. You know, most people that watched that video of his didn't subscribe to him. Whoa. So I don't know what the hell he's talking about. Really clutching at straws here. If you don't like his politics, then criticize that. But TheQuartering's too stupid and afraid to do that sort of thing. So he goes for these low blows that'll play well with his dumbass audience.
It's easy to question why Maza is moving to YouTube if he detests the company so much. Oh, but I'm sure The Verge is going to make an excuse for him. YouTube remains one of the only platforms for user-generated content in a video-on-demand format that allows creators to monetize their work and reach a massive audience.
That is true.
He could use BitChute, he could use Library, he could use Brightburn or whatever it's called. He could use Library. Did I say that one already? He could use Dailymotion. He could use Facebook. He could use Twitter. He could monetize it all via Patreon and not rely on monetization. Quite honestly, Maza would probably do better to just promote himself on Twitter because that's the only place he's relevant.
Alright, so TheQuartering is talking out his ass right now. So he named a bunch of websites as potential alternatives to YouTube that Maza can use. I mean, a lot of these, most people probably haven't even heard of. I mean, he himself seemed to forget the name of one of them. BitChute is to YouTube what Gab is to Twitter. No one really knows about it except Nazis and other dumbasses. Don't hedge your bets on it. It's never going to take off. And if you're unironically suggesting stuff like Dailymotion, which breaks all the time, he mentioned Library twice. I don't know what the hell that is. And then Facebook, which deals with an entirely different kind of audience and different types of content. Let's face it, there's nothing quite like YouTube out there. Alright, people have been talking about alternatives for like a decade. Remember vid.me? That was supposed to be like the great competitor? Nope, it's dead. Twitter isn't really the place for like video essays and long form content either. I'm not even sure if your videos can get monetized on there. So what are these points? Like, he knows these are bad points. He has to. He's a professional at this. I refuse to believe that anyone in his position is so stupid they can't see that, right? You literally have to be like subhuman. And despite my dislike for the guy, I don't think he's quite that dumb. But he's got to do his grift, man. He's got to do his thing. He's got to stretch and make up any possible point towards people that he knows his audience dislikes. No matter how frail or tenuous his actual point or argument is, he's got to stretch for it, man. Just so he can get those daily 3 videos out and get over the 10-minute mark so he can rake in all the ad revenue. He could choose to make these better videos with better points and better argument. He could choose to put more time and thought into what he does. He could choose to make a little bit less money, but he doesn't. And he has admitted as much, that he will pander to maximize his audience as much as he can. What's unreal to me is that this clear, unambiguously amoral grifter actually appeals to a lot of normies. Right, so I have a good friend who's pretty normie, who told me that he actually liked some of TheQuartering's opinions and some of his videos. I was like, what? Isn't it super obvious that he's a dumb piece of shit? And my friend was like, well, yeah, sometimes he has some really dumb opinions, but some members of my family sometimes have dumb opinions. That doesn't mean I should dismiss everything he ever says. And my response to that was that he's not just like any individual person who probably has some good and some bad opinions. He's like a shitty tabloid newspaper, like The Sun or the Daily Mail. When you're essentially a media entity focused on appealing to particular sensibilities in people, focused on sensationalism, then the very core you exist on is rotten. They might come out with a decent factual article now and then, but largely they're dog shit because they're designed to be. They're designed to appeal to the lowest common denominator, a mass of morons. And that's what the Quartering is too. He is those shitty magazines you see at the front of the grocery store that boomer uneducated housewives buy. Only he appeals to younger gamer dumb fucks. Now during my explanation my friend just completely switched off, stopped giving a shit and didn't respond. Which is why I'm ranting about it here, because this is now a place where I can vent my frustrations, I guess. And this brings me to something else I've been thinking about lately, relating to separating dishonesty or bad faith arguments or maliciousness from just simple ignorance or stupidity. So I read literally all my comments, even the ones I get flagged as inappropriate, or if a video of mine is posted on Reddit somewhere, I'll go read that thread to see what people are saying. I like doing that. But every so often I'll see like a negative comment or a criticism or someone arguing against a point of mine, and I'll often respond. And often I'll have like a knee-jerk reaction of, well, this person has to be wrong because I think I'm right, and I'll just want to like defend my position no matter what. I think that's like a natural reaction to having your position challenged, and I try to catch myself from doing that. But generally, I like to assess as fairly as I can whether or not what they're saying has any merit to it, whether it makes any sense, and then go from there. Now, there are situations where this gets really hard to the point where I feel like I'm insane. So there will be these times where someone comes in and writes like an argument against me. I'll try to think about it, come to the conclusion that I still think I'm right, and then respond why. But they'll then come back to me again, and they'll keep coming back to me no matter how many times I respond. And it will just be like the same argument repeated with like different wording. And in situations where two people are adamant that they are correct about a position and they are incapable of reaching some sort of amicable conclusion, there has to be either some horrible miscommunication going on where people just can't get their point across clearly enough for the other person to understand, or one of these two people are just completely incapable of grasping a concept. Like in the same way that you can't teach a cockroach to speak English, no matter how hard you try, right? They just don't have the physical structures or the brain or whatever capable of doing it. So in the same way, we must also be limited by our physical structures and physiology, right? Because why wouldn't we be? Just like other animals are, and we are after all an animal too. I don't think humans are capable of infinite knowledge. Like you can learn new skills or a new language or whatever, but the pool of things that we can possibly learn that's out there in the universe is ultimately limited, right? So theoretically, there could be like an advanced alien being that can know things that we can't ever know. Not because we weren't brought up in the right environments or whatever, but because we are just incapable of it. Like physiologically, we don't have the right makeup to ever grasp those concepts. And I started thinking, well, this is probably true on a micro level as well, right? Like between humans. To a lesser extent, sure, but it might still exist on some level that there are certain lines of thinking or ways of thinking that some people just can't engage with. Now, before I go on, I'd like to get a couple of things clear. One, I'm not talking about like factual information or like levels of technical expertise that you can gain by learning or Googling or whatever. I'm talking about like more fundamental conceptual things like logical ways of thinking and arguments and stuff like that. And number two, I should also say, I'm not a geneticist, I'm not a biologist, I'm not a neurologist. I don't actually know what I'm talking about here. I could be chatting some absolute shit right now. I'm just rambling here, okay? Alright, but anyway, so I started thinking, well, this has to be true between humans as well, that I'm capable of understanding certain things that other people aren't, and of course vice versa as well. And that idea really scares me. It's really scary because how would I ever know I'm right? What if they're speaking on a plane that I'm incapable of reaching? There might just be like a flaw in my logic somewhere in an argument that I just will never see, no matter how many people point at it. And I used to think that everyone, no matter who, if they could just think about something enough and they had the relevant information given to them in the right way, that they will all come to the same conclusions, that ultimately logic will prevail or whatever. And frankly, I don't know if that's the case anymore. And that sucks because I'd like to be able to know if I'm incorrect on something, but also because I used to believe in people's ability to think about things rationally. And I guess that's being kind of eroded now, and I'm getting a lot more cynical about people. I don't know, and maybe this is why sometimes, when you look at issues in the world, things feel so fragmented, because people are kind of living in different realities. Not just because we're fed different propaganda or whatever, but because we all are limited by our own brains, and those limitations are different depending on the person. And, sometimes I will ascribe like bad faith or dishonesty onto people and some of the arguments they make or some of what they're saying. I feel like a lot of people have like an ends justify the means philosophy, where they'll have like an ideological end goal, and whatever they can say to move them closer towards that is fair game. So they'll make dishonest arguments, whether that end goal is to own someone online or to make the world more right-wing or left-wing or whatever, right? I used to think this about a lot of people, but I don't know, maybe they just can't see things any other way, and they genuinely believe they're right. When you say someone's arguing in bad faith, typically you're ascribing a sort of intention behind their dishonesty, right? That they mean to be dishonest. But now, because of some of the arguments or comments that I've had on Reddit or on my videos or whatever, I don't know anymore. Maybe actually in some cases, dishonesty and stupidity are one and the same, even though I'd like to think that's not true. Or even like bigotry, right? Like, is a person racist because they hate other races or because they're stupid? At some points they're so tangled with each other that they're basically the same thing. And I know when I say stupidity, that's like such a loaded and harsh term, because there's all sorts of different forms of intelligence. I guess when I say someone is stupid, I mean stupid in the ways that I value, whereas they might be way smarter than me in other ways. But yeah, sometimes I'll see like Reddit comments or messages I get where I'll think, oh, you have to be arguing in bad faith right now, when they'll just like keep coming back like NPCs with infinite spawns, going down the same path, the same shitty arguments, but with like a slight rewording of it. But why would they be doing that? It's not like they're making any money out of it. And at the end of the day, they have to trust their own thought process as much as I trust my own, because that's all you can do. So I don't know. I've stopped replying to people as much as I used to. I'll argue back in a comment once, maybe twice, and then I'll just stop if they keep coming back. Because I've found now that there's just no point. That some people just can't see things my way, or I can't see it theirs. And I don't know, that just really sucks to me. I guess I had like a really naive view of how we interact with each other and how we arrive at conclusions. Alright, on that pessimistic note, if you made it this far, then check out my other videos, like, subscribe, bell, follow my Twitter and my Twitch, and yeah, see ya.